Hello and welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm your host, Ed Charbeneau, and with me is my co-host, John Bristowe. How are you doing, John?
Good. I'm experimenting with the new lights, so I hope you guys like the new background. It's all
And
happening.
yeah, so that's not a green screen. You got some
No,
nice,
this is actually live back here, so I'm playing around with the lights.
nice. You got like a live blur going on too, or
Yeah,
something.
Ed, we're living in the future now. We've got this technology that allows us to blur the background so we can hide all the embarrassing, evidence behind us. So, and then of course I'm using my LiFX lights overhead.
And let me zoom in a bit, John. Let me get this stuff up on the screen. Um, I've got a good friend that moved over to Split Software,
Mm-hmm.
and I was checking out their blog, and I found this blog post, a guide to APIs, REST, SOAP, GraphQL, and gRPC. Last time we were on the show, John, you had an article about tRPC, and I
Correct.
thought, why not share this article, because it kind of differentiates like what all of these are. They're all some sort of server-side APIs, that web APIs that we can connect to, and this kind of gives you the rundown of like what is a REST API, what is gRPC, what is SOAP. Some of these are older APIs that people still use. Some of them are newer, like GraphQL. But this kind of gives you the ideas of how to use each one of them, what the differences are between them.
Mm-hmm.
And, overall, it's just kind of a good summary to kind of refresh your memory, or maybe you're catching up on some of the newer ones that are in here, of what each of these are. So I thought that was a good read
Yeah.
over here on Split.
I think traditionally, I don't think there's much of a debate as to using APIs. I think generally speaking, most people want to use them.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes down to what you are capable of, and I've found that one of the harder problems to solve is defining your schema. Schema, at the end of the day, is how you share contracts across the wire,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whatever protocol. The only exception of that, of course, is GraphQL, where um, GraphQL allows you to define queries that you have to come up with ahead of time. You have to define everything, but the queries themselves can be somewhat dynamic. I think that GraphQL is certainly the one that gives you the most flexibility on the front end, whereas REST and other protocols, I don't know anyone who's using SOAP, to be honest, these days. But
It's kind of old
REST,
school. I'm sure there's still
it
some
is. Yeah.
legacy stuff out there that hasn't updated.
Yeah, gRPC is interesting. I mean, it's very efficient. Protocol buffers are great, and I think that they allow you to gen your schemas really quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea is that ultimately, I think, comes down to schema, how you define schema. So with REST, that's typically done via JSON schema, which is not the easiest thing to work with. Whereas protocol buffers are nice. That's one of the benefits of using something like gRPC. Obviously, they have to be internet friendly. They have to be things that you can use. And incidentally, I was very pleased to see
There's a
that Telerik
protobuf
Fiddler
file there.
everywhere. Yeah, so I was very pleased to see that Telerik Fiddler will be adding support for gRPC very soon. So you'll be able to see the actual transactions occur as they occur across the wire. But ultimately, it's going to depend on, your decision around this will depend on your requirements. Do you need to have a schema that's well defined? Do you need some flexibility on the client side? Maybe you should
Mm-hmm.
consider GraphQL. There are some caveats that go along with that.
Yeah, it's nice to see that added as well. I know I'm not the only person that made that suggestion, but I did make that suggestion quite some time ago. Like, we need to cover gRPC because it's starting to pick up some steam, especially with the .NET community, when it got implemented as a kind of a default protocol that it was .NET was supporting. So
Yep.
it's good to see that come through.
Mm-hmm.
But overall,
Mm-hmm.
again, good read, and I'll publish these up on my LinkedIn page very shortly. I've got that queued up in the background here, but it's not quite
Nice.
done yet. I'll hit submit on it shortly.
Okay.
Um, I picked this up, John, off of the .NET weekly stand-up show that they do. There's actually several shows on the .NET stand-up, but this is related to MAUI. And this was kind of hosted by James Montemagno here, and this is an extension by a gentleman. I think his name is Matt Lacey, and this is called the MAUI App Accelerator, and it's a wizard-based UI extension for Visual Studio. So this kind of gives you.
I'm trying to understand the goat motif there. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the goat comes in, other than hey, goats are
sure,
cute,
they're fun
or something.
Yes.
Sure. So yeah, maybe we'd have to ask him why the goat. It actually may be in the video from their interview as well. So there is an interview up on the .NET, the weekly stand-up site that goes with this. But it's a nice UI here. You get the version selector, kind of walks you through how do you want to host your code. You want C#, do you want code behind files, do you want MVVM, then you can like pick different styles of navigation, what types of pages that you want to add to your application, and then there's some extra utilities that you can add. And I'm sure this is something, it is open source, but I'm sure it's written in a way to be extensible, so you can, add additional features to this. So I'd say this is probably going to grow over time, and it looks like it's something that could be pretty popular. And we have similar kind of workflows with the Telerik stuff as well.
Yes.
I don't know if we have it for MAUI. I have to ask Sam about that. He's dealing more with the native MAUI side of things, but we do have this for Telerik UI for Blazor. It's almost identical in the way that you set this up, and you get different pages that you can add to your template and so on. So it's cool to see this for MAUI as well.
There's
it's open source there.
I would definitely say there's a special place in heaven, not hell, but heaven, for folks who maintain and build the sort of next wizard experience for doing things like template-based development. I do know that this was largely popularized by Visual Studio and also by Microsoft for a very long time. There's the Windows Control Toolkit has this as well built into their extension. So a lot of ones take advantage of this. Telerik is, of course, and other vendor controls do this all the time. It's definitely a lost art, and it's something that I don't think is appreciated. But I love when people take the extra time to do something like this.
I wonder if the goat logo is a gesture to the greatest of all time.
That's what I was thinking as well. Yeah. MAUI being the one framework to rule them all.
Yeah, I think we might have just figured that one out. Thank you, Scooby-Doo. We solved the mystery. All right. Just a little shameless plug here.
Sure.
Make sure you catch our release webinars next week.
I watched it this morning.
Yeah, that wasn't a webinar. That was our party.
Sorry. Yes,
release
party.
parties.
Party.
We kind of have a warming up to the webinar that we do. We did that this morning. We had people from the teams on talking about what they built, some of our DevRel folks talking about what we're going to cover in the webinar, some of our favorite bits. Even some of our sales folks jumped in. Rick was on there. He's really in touch with all the new stuff that goes into all the products. So he was on chatting about some of his favorite things. But we cover so many products these days. There's several webinars to sign up for. You mentioned Fiddler Everywhere. That's one of the things that's covered in our tools and testing webinars. We've got all of our JavaScript stuff in a webinar. We've got all of our .NET stuff in another webinar. So make sure you visit the page, sign up for the things that you want to see, or maybe just have like a mini conference. Sign up for all of them. Check them all out.
I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant here, and you're gonna like this one, Ed. If you're not using a proxy trace tool and you're doing anything with, we've talked about APIs. Everyone uses a network stack these days. Everyone has APIs these days. If you're not using a proxy trace tool, I would strongly suggest that you get one. It is bonkers to me how many developers I still meet today who aren't using Postman, Fiddler, Charles,
Hmm.
Wireshark. I mean, anything. Use something to see
Yeah.
what's happening on
Even
the wire.
Swagger, like, is
Oh,
kind of a
well,
light
there are
version of it.
let's not get crazy, all right? So, but Fiddler to me, I mean, Fiddler everywhere is kind of the chef's kiss of mwah, just like it hits that sweet spot for me. It gives me just enough, like it's not Fiddler proper, so it's not all the bells and whistles that Eric put into Eric Lawrence, the original author of the tool, put into the tool. But Fiddler Everywhere is just exactly what I need, when I need it, where it needs to be. And I can't praise it enough. And I espouse it all the time whenever
Hmm.
I'm doing anything with networking. So kudos to the Fiddler team. I know that they probably are one of the teams that they don't get all the fanfare because they're kind of like infrastructure, like they're not always seen as like the really cool kids sort of stuff, but what they do is amazing.
When we were talking about SOAP, by the way, like Chords of Truth in chat was like, yeah, I know how it feels to work with legacy code. I'm looking forward to the day where I can update some things. So you know, even if you can't update things, Fiddler Everywhere probably help you at least debug them.
Oh God, yes, you have no idea.
While I'm giving my shameless plug, John, I did notice you had some links or a link. Do you want me to share any of the other ones that you had there? There's
Oh,
some
whatever. This
things
is a little
going on
video.
with Octopus deploy.
Yeah, we did a little video here about the latest. We introduced a new CLI, and so we built this in Go, and I did a little video here of my embarrassing head, but basically gave a rundown of what's it all about, how we built it, how it works, yada yada yada. So, and we can shut that window now.
And I just killed one of my links. I don't know which one, so I'll have to
That's
circle
okay.
back and figure out which one it was.
Yep.
This was something I know how much you love AR, VR, all of that stuff, John. But this
Yeah.
one, I think you'll actually like this one. One reason I say that.
Is this another story about burning money?
No, but that is a good point to make. What you're referring to, I think, John, is the fact that all of my predictions for AR becoming a thing in the near future have fallen very hard and flat over the last year, costing
You didn't listen to me. I've been sitting on this.
millions,
I've been
if not
sitting. Look,
$1 billion,
Ed,
or billions,
it's
if not
okay.
trillions of
Ed,
dollars.
I gotta tell you, when a friend, when your buddy's like kind of mixed up with the wrong partner as in a relationship, I feel
Yes,
like you've
yes.
been there with AR and VR and it's okay, Ed. I forgive you. It's okay.
It'll it'll be all right. There's more fish in the sea. They're just not AR and VR.
Yes.
Okay, so the cool thing about this requires no glasses, no headsets, nothing on your personal part other than
Okay.
opting into it. Okay.
Oh.
So this one, the magic of it all is the
Oh, I see
display.
where. Yes. So they're face recognizing and they're saying, "Hey," and what are they shooting lasers into your retina?
So these are multi-directional displays,
Mm,
and they're capable of shifting the display towards an individual just by changing the orientation of the pixels
yes.
on the
Yes.
screen.
I
So it's like
gotcha.
a
I gotcha.
filter that they can place on the LCD screen. So you think of it like
Like those
polarized
holograms you used to see on
lenses.
magazine covers back in the 80s,
It's like polarized lenses.
Yes.
So you can only see these from certain angles, and it's able to tune that angle
Hmm.
using facial recognition to kind of get your location, and then beam, not beam it at you, but shift the mini blinds, so to speak,
Sure.
so only you see a custom image. And they're testing this out at the Detroit airport. And you scan your boarding pass, and there's a specific lane that you have to get in and scan your boarding pass to kind of take part in the experiment. But once you scan that boarding pass, they don't have pictures of the lane in here. There's a video of it attached to this article. But you step into a specific lane, you scan your boarding pass, and as you walk forward, it's telling you which direction to go to board your aircraft. So it's kind of like an early tech demo that they just launched in the Detroit airport. But the concept is really cool because it doesn't require you to, hold your phone up in the air or wear some massively oversized goggles on your face or anything like that. So it's pretty neat.
You know what I would like to see before this arrives is actually reservation systems that are up to date.
You know how to take the reservation. You just don't know how to hold the reservation.
That's right.
Only Seinfeld fans will get what we're talking about. But yeah, I think.
Yeah, given all the problems that the U.S. just recently went through with a somewhat well-known vendor of airline travel, I would suggest that maybe instead of trying to be so customer-oriented in terms of this, that they focus on maybe doing some upgrades and
I think it was
like
the ye old centralized database of all the carriers crashed, and literally took all of it out. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a need to improve the back end stuff. I think so. So I've said this forever. And yeah, Chords of Truth definitely hits it on. I'm waiting for the in-car Echo Alexa equivalent of scanning a sign saying I'm thinking of getting a meal, what's nearby, talking to me while driving. This does exist. I've been in cabs in Chicago, for example, that do this. They have targeted advertising. Obviously, it's a dumb terminal, doesn't know anything about you, etc.
Yeah.
But
some of it's off geolocation too.
That's right. Yeah, I think that we'll definitely get to a good point there at some point. So, but I think that definitely back-end systems and things like that need to be improved. I think the travel system itself is a bit of a nightmare, especially domestic travel in the U.S. I've traveled a lot domestically in the U.S. and stuff like this is fine, but I don't know. I think it's
more like you walk through, you scan your boarding pass, and you get a custom message on how long your flight has been delayed.
Sure.
There was like a report that came out yesterday. It was like the top 10 airports for delays. And it was like Chicago O'Hare was number 1 and Atlanta was number 10. And like the host of the show that I was watching was like blaming the airports. And I'm like, this is not an airport problem, in my opinion. Like each of those things is a hub for a certain airline carrier. That's how it works in the US. So all of the, not all of, but a majority of the United Airlines flights come out of Chicago O'Hare. So that means that a majority of the delays are out of United Airlines flights, whereas number 10 was Delta, and Delta is their hub is in Atlanta. So if you look at the delays by carrier, they probably line up pretty well with those locations. But yeah, it's not great. I've got to do some traveling here soon. That's why I'm kind of stuck on this. So next week, John, for folks in London, if I can make it there on time, I will be at NDC London. And NDC London, some fantastic people are going to be out there. My teammate, Alyssa Nicole, is going to be there. So looking forward to seeing her again. Some other fantastic folks like Billy Hollis will be there. There I am, Eagle Hansen. He's one of the guys that works on, or the person that created B Unit. Good friend of mine, Guy Royce, Heather Downey. I mean, there's so many good names in here. Jimmy Ingstrom, Jimmy Bogard. Too many to name. If you're in the area, come see all of us speaking at NDC London, or the Norwegian Developer Conference. So
we'll have a booth there.
Yes, we have a booth there. Do you mean you have one too, John, or were you asking about me?
Octopus CLI will be there. We'll have a booth.
Oh, nice.
See, we're right there.
Nice. I'll have to let me know who's going to be there. We'll say hello.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of good folks out there. Our progress team will be there at a booth as well. I'll be heading up our what do you call it, release webinar from there. And it'll be a good time. London is always a good time. Not only will I be there, but shortly after, I will be at the .NET Front End Day.
Oh.
So this is a new conference, .NET Front End Day. Talking about all things front end. It's a bit of a smaller, more niche venue. So we've got like MAUI, focusing on MAUI. We've got Maddie and David from Microsoft on the MAUI team over there speaking about all things MAUI. Sam Basu as well joining them with the MAUI stuff. And of course, I'll be there talking about Blazor, and the one and only Richard Campbell will be there talking about all things.
What does he have to say? What does he know about .NET? Nothing.
So it should be another great one. Nice small like set of speakers to focus in on something very specific, and that is the front end of .NET.
It's not lost on me that they're showing a Mac there showing Trello for .NET Front End Day. I have no idea why that's the graphic, but there you go.
I'm guessing this is a placeholder. This site just popped up online yesterday.
Okay. All right.
So that is a great observation, though.
It's embarrassing when you actually know all the icons. So that's Finder,
and their password
Launcher,
is
Chrome, Postman, Slack, Sublime Text, JetBrains.
Okay, so
sorry.
just to be clear, you can do .NET front end on a Mac.
I know. Let's bring it back. Bring it back.
I'm just wondering if there's a persona this person had in mind that selected this image, though, of the password openly displayed on the keyboard. What are you trying to get at about? What are you trying to get at about Mac users? Whoever selected this, Jimmy Engstrom. Excuse me, a little tickle there. Not sure, or maybe it's just a placeholder, and we're reading way too much into it, John.
I think it's the latter. Yes.
I have yet another conference that I'm going to in between those two. This one is Sweet Tug, which is in Sweden, in Stockholm. So this is also in Stockholm. I'll be in Stockholm.
Not the name of a piece of furniture you can buy from IKEA.
No.
But I wouldn't surprise me if there was.
No, another big one. This is the day before .NET Front End Dev Day. And again, lots of fantastic people, more than we can mention on one show. But yeah, my travels abroad have started for the season, so you will see me at these places. So if you are from the European area and you're able to get to any of the venues, stop by, say hello. We will be there both sponsoring and speaking and so on. So make sure you stop by, get some tickets to come out and see some of these amazing speakers do their thing. All right. This is one that I missed early in the year here. I was at CodeMash in Sandusky, Ohio last week. And our folks here on the DevRel team did a show on the state of JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
So the two of us, John, we talked about the state of CSS a couple weeks ago. Yep. This is a very similar survey type of a thing.
Yeah, this was the original one that started it all off. So we had the state of JavaScript has been around for quite a while, actually. And I think prior to this, it might have been the Stack Overflow survey. I can't remember which, but there was a lot of value in this. And so what they've done is they've surveyed, I think, over 40,000 developers around their use of various technologies, particularly around the front end.
Yeah.
And so they gave their answers, and this is a result of that. And these surveys are always interesting to read because they're always kind of like they give you a little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out, especially around the front end stacks that are there. And what I'm mostly interested in is, where are the trends realizing too what is becoming hot, what is becoming not. You still see a lot of laggers like jQuery hanging around, which is always fun to see. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're just producing angle brackets and moving pixels around on a browser. But I think it's always interesting to see things where things are at. Most interestingly is the observations that people make around particular JavaScript features. So there are, in addition to the frameworks and libraries and all that sort of stuff, the features themselves, in particular around ECMAScript and the standardization of that, is usually something that I find very interesting. Libraries themselves will continue to evolve, but it's really the language features that are the most important, I think, because that's really where a lot of that heavy lifting is done.
Trying to find out where, this is it, features here.
Yes.
Yeah,
so features will. So yeah. So there's things like nullish. So there's a variety of other. Yeah. So there's a variety of things that are in there. The ones that coalescing, nullish coalescing is one that I would say is definitely something that folks. But it's interesting to see people's perspective on this and how attitudes will shift over time. And then what's nice about this is that they provide a link to the actual either spec or can I use or things of that nature. So yeah, these are all the language features that are there, the browser APIs that are also available, and it gives you a sense of what's coming, what's there, etc. You know, so there's lots of stuff worth looking at in these reports, and I think they're incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. This was an article I grabbed. It's kind of a refresher for me and probably some folks, but there's probably a lot of people out there that still don't realize they can get free web hosting just by using GitHub Pages. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a repository of code, but you could host a blog and things like that as well. So GitHub Pages is out there. And this is from InfoWorld. They're kind of reintroducing GitHub Pages to folks. There's been some updates over the years, so if you haven't looked at it in a while, it's probably really worth looking at again if you're not using it because it was missing some feature. Maybe look at it one more time. Used to use mainly this Ruby-based Jekyll, but now they have Hugo, which is written in Go. So, John, I know you're a big fan. So you could do that. And Hugo is pretty Windows friendly as far as I've heard. So it says in here, there's some ways that you can install it on Windows. I know Ruby on Windows, or at least Jekyll on Windows, doesn't have any real issues, but it can be a little bit of a learning curve getting that one started. I have mine hosted on Ruby. I'm a Windows user, and every time I pave a machine, I have to go through the little jumps to get that one working quite right the first time. It always takes just a little bit of my time to get that one started. So maybe I need to look at Hugo, see if that's any better for me. But there's some options there. And then you can also publish content with GitHub Actions. John, I know you're a big fan of GitHub Actions.
I am.
So, you can work your Hugo content into GitHub Action, get all that publishing stuff working. And yeah, that's about all I've got to say about that. I've got a few sites that are up there on GitHub Pages. And there's like a generator as well.
There is, yeah.
Kind of click through your repository and it will create one of these sites for you, kind of scaffold things out to get you started. So if you don't want to start from scratch, you don't have to. So if you got like a nice, documentation page you want to build for some little open source tool that you've created, or you have a really nice library you have out there and you want a nice attractive homepage for it, it's easy to just pull that wizard up in settings, click through it, and get that out there.
Awesome.
John, I know both of us are big fans of Rider. So you grabbed the release info here for Rider. They do their release is similar to the way we do. We've got 2023.1, which is going to be their first major release of the year.
Yep. So Rider is, for those who don't know, is a good alternative to VS Code, VS, whatever .NET tool you're using. So it's a .NET cross-platform .NET IDE, and they've been iterating on this for quite a while. JetBrains is as many folks know, one of the leaders along with Telerik, etc., in the .NET ecosystem. And Rider is their IDE. And so they've added a bunch of, well, they're planning to add a bunch of new features to their 2023.1 release, including things like syncing of settings, Docker support improvements. The one that I liked was the schema management for databases. This is similar to what you've seen in other tools
Hmm.
with VS, for example, where you can do schema comparisons for databases. This is wonderful. I think anything that can help me make sense of my databases is always a good thing in my book. So I remember my first inkling into this world of comparing schemas was back in the day of Visual Studio 2005, and when that shipped, there was a schema comparison tool, and there was also the DAC components that you could install for schemas
Oh yeah.
for SQL Server as well back in the day. And these are continue to be popular. Developers love them. Being able to surface out that experience in a tool like Rider turns out to be pretty important. So,
Yeah, I mean, this would be really helpful too if you're working on an app that has a new database and you're trying to scaffold out, like with Entity Framework or something.
mhm.
Um, you get that code first generation stuff, and you want to just kind of peek in and see what the actual database looks like, and compare it with the last version of it as you do migrations and things. Super helpful there. And then, of course, there's some Unity support here. Unity, the popular game dev engine. There's some really awesome games built on Unity.
I know, I
Uh,
know.
yeah, so you
I
can.
won't pretend. I won't pretend to know what this is because I know what it is, but I don't do game development, and I won't pretend to know that I know how this is done. So I'll skip that one.
Yeah, Unity. I think there's actually an editor that you usually use for this. I don't know what parts of Unity this kind of plugs into. Um, It looks like it's a very specific part. It says Unity's data-oriented technology stack, or DOT. So yeah, I'd have to kind of see where this jumps in. Probably mostly on, I would think, scripting things. But again, I don't want to speak out of turn either. I haven't done any Unity firsthand. I've kind of
Yep.
looked at it. I've dabbled with other game engines, but never Unity itself. But I know you write some C# code in there somewhere.
Yep.
But
Slap on the keyboard long enough, something will come out.
they've also got support for Unreal Engine too, though. So it looks like they're tackling more than just the one game engine. I think Unreal Engine is C++, if I remember correctly. So um, that's that's the two big players right there, though. I mean, Unity and Unreal. That's kind of the big ones in that space. Like
Hmm.
you're not going to get, like, Steam is the other, or not Steam. Well, I guess it's Steam Engine is the other big one that you might see some things on. Sorry, the Source Engine, not Steam Engine. Source, the Valve engine that they use for Half-Life and Half-Life Alyx. That one's out there as well. But these are probably the two most popular ones. Let's see, grammar checking. That's always nice to have. UI performance, localization. It's a nice release there, especially with all the game engine stuff coming out. And more new stuff. We've got React Native
Yes.
0.71. TypeScript is now default, Flexbox, Gap, and more.
Yeah. So React Native is, if you're well versed with MAUI, it's the same kind of idea. As the idea is I want to build a native app using React for typically Android and iOS devices. And so this has been around for a long time for folks who've been following this space, so well aware of that. Version 71 offers TypeScript by default. This was announced earlier. First class support for TypeScript was announced earlier. So the new app template is TypeScript by default. And there's a bunch of declarations that ship with React Native, so those are important, especially when you're doing language bindings, etc. But in 71, we've got things for simplified layouts and Flexbox Gap. We've got Well, and web-inspired properties for accessibility, styles, events, things like that. So the developer experience is getting far better. And I haven't built an app in React Native for quite a while. I haven't touched React Native for quite a while. But back in the day, I remember how clunky it felt. A lot of CLI commands, a lot of holding things the right way. And I just saw this. I'm like, good. They're continuing to move on this. I mean, React Native is actually, for a lot of developers, still continues to be a very high value framework. I mean, and I think it largely speaks to the fact that you've got these curated garden experiences of app developments that have to be approved. And developers don't like that. They're like, look, I just want to ship an update and have it auto pick up. And React Native enables me to do that. So why not? So I think that if you're building an iOS or Android app today, you should consider React Native.
It's one of those things where it's a reuse of skills type of a buy-in. Like MAUI lets you reuse your .NET skills. This lets you reuse your React skills to do native app development. So that's where the real selling point is, I think, for folks. If you already know the thing, then keep using that thing to do more stuff, right?
That's right.
I haven't looked at React Native in a while. I still think you have to write the different UI code. It's not web UI code, but it's web-like. But it's not exactly web UI code.
They do have some mobile only sort of context. Yes.
Yeah, it's similar to the way XAML works for MAUI. It's not HTML. There is some stuff with Blazor now, but that's like kind of a web view inside of a thing, which isn't quite native UI code. Where this is native UI code, but then again, it's web inspired. It's not actual like web elements you're using, but it's still the same core concepts of React to make things work, and it's written with TypeScript instead of some platform code like Swift or something like that.
There you go.
That is all I've got for today, John. I think I did accidentally click close something, but it was a duplicate. And then I should be able to post this up on my LinkedIn page here shortly. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see a post on Eat Sleep Code Developer News come out in just a few minutes. All right, folks, stay tuned to the channel for some of our other shows. So make sure you check them out. Hit the like, subscribe, all those buttons to get updates on the channel. Thanks again, John, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay.